So we're going to start out with training. Typically, you're going to have it says considerable reduction in sport-specific training intensity. Well, for most strength conditioning coaches, if we're still competing in a sport, it's something like powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting. Not saying that we don't compete in those, but we need to back off from time to time because we can't continue to just push up, 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 and up. We need to have down times. Something that's really good is that low-intensity endurance work. There's so many times that I know that I personally loathe getting on something like an elliptical or a bike or something, but if I am doing low intensity work, 20, 30 minutes, I get off of there and I just feel better. Sometimes it's that I have more energy, sometimes it's that my joints quit hurting, whatever, but it's on the low intensity side of things. So it's not saying that going out and doing sprint workouts is what I need to be doing here. Well, no. That's going to be producing the hydrogen ions. I'm trying to get away from it. It's going to be producing lactate. I'm trying to get away from it, especially with the sprinting, because it utilizes a lot of motor units. Lots of active rest. What is active rest? Well, typically it's a low-intensity endurance work. And with the active rest, it's things that you enjoy. It might be swimming, it might be canoeing, it could be a lot of things, a multitude of things. Whatever that is something that is active and it's fun for you, that's probably a good idea. Instead of sticking with the traditional stuff, the traditional workouts, the exercise that you do, and you should continue to do exercise, it's in the form of fun and games. Now, some will say, well, with the athletes, football players practice football. Yeah, but they don't practice soccer or dodgeball or handball or tennis. So exercise can still be done during these recovery periods, but we need to make sure that we're not doing the same thing that we always are. We're changing things up. Let's make it fun. Let them feel human again. It's amazing the hormones that are released from the body, and if you can harness that, you're pretty well set to be able to do anything that it is that you need to do because they're going to be able to recover. And calisthenics, simple, just going through large ranges of motion with the body, loosening things up, engaging the fascial system, lengthening things out. It's going to engage the parasympathetic autonomic nervous system. Long time holds on different stretches, engaging the Golgi tendon organ that says, hey, we're okay here. I've detected strain. We're going to send a signal back up to the brain that tells the motor cortex, hey, relax, everything's okay. So these are all great things to do from the training aspect. With nutrition, okay, you're going to want to have meals that are rich in alkali. Now, what I'm saying here is that we're just adding in some foods. I do not want you to think that we're talking about doing the alkaline diet or anything like that. No, just eat fruits, eat vegetables, some low-fat dairy. And instead of just water, have water with some minerals in it. Those are typically going to have been depleted throughout the training process through for yourself or through your coaching, etc. You're going to need increased amounts of vitamins A, B, and C. The A and C for their antioxidant effect. B because that's what's responsible for energy production. You're going to want to have no stimulants at all, which is horrible. Because you're going to need to cause a restoration of homeostasis. The stimulants, they're engaging the sympathetic nervous system. They're engaging that branch. We want to try and move away from that, which is why the next line, sedatives and soporifics may be prescribed. These are things that simply help you sleep. Okay, maybe thinking like melatonin or something of those likes. I'm not huge on the big prescription drugs like Ambien, etc. I think that you want to try and stay as natural as you can. So like melatonin, valerian root, other things like that. Alcohol in small quantities permitted. And by small quantities, we mean like a half a drink to one drink. It's been found that simply having 2 drinks can completely disrupt your sleep. Well, if we're wanting to enhance sleep, we don't want to restrict it through the encouragement of outside substances. Some of the best foods to jumpstart. What are the ones that are most alkaline? Spinach, carrots, cauliflower, celery. black currants, raisins, adding lemon juice to your water, different vinegars. Interestingly enough about vinegar is that while it is an acid, somehow it turns basic within the stomach, or acts like a base in your stomach as it leaches out into the bloodstream. My grandmother used to take a shot glass full of apple cider vinegar every morning and said, hey, it's good for what ails you. And it turns out my grandma was right. It is good for what ails you. It's a good just general overall tonic of sorts. Now let's look here. We've got recovery means, the physiotherapies. A lot of the Soviet research really loved the different baths. So looking at a warm bath, not extremely hot, but with like valerian or potassium bromide. And honestly, Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate. Magnesium is something that is burned through the metabolic processes, and it can actually be absorbed through the skin. So it is a good warm bath, a good warm soak. In addition to valerian or potassium bromide, and those things are simply through the smell or absorption, are essentially simple forks that are going to help you sleep and relax. To wake up, instead of caffeine, they're recommending cold showers in the morning, light and rhythmical exercise. They list out in the different areas Swedish massage. One of the things that Swedish massage is referring to is basically a feel-good massage. So it's not the deep tissue trying to break apart everything to cause a greater function. Now this is just, hey, help me relax. If it's tight, loosen it up. It's not about breaking scar tissue. It's not about anything like that at all. It's just, hey, can I have the muscle relax? If you've received a massage and you've fallen asleep on the table like I have, you know what that is like. The sauna through the stimulation of heat shock proteins, is a great way to enhance recovery. But whenever somebody's really far gone, the sauna just serves as another stressor. Rather than something that they're going to get better from, it could actually make them worse. So they said low temperatures, if at all. Now, something that has not been well researched, but you can look at a lot of the work that's coming out of the University of Tulsa on float therapy. These are basically sensory deprivation tanks that have got water that's around 98 to 99 degrees. It's highly salinated so that you float, and then you're placed into a dark pod with some ambient color and noise that is restoration. I call it the nuke. That essentially it sends your autonomic nervous system status in a huge decline for about a day, and then you return a few days later at a markedly higher function. It's something that's good for people who've had sleep issues. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out from Justin Feinstein at the University of Tulsa on the use of the float tanks and recovery and autonomic nervous system status. And I think that this is an area that if you are a coach and you're kind of feeling burnt out, that this is the nuke. Go for this. And go for it whenever you've got a couple of days off that you don't have to get up in the morning and coach, because it's going to make you want to sleep more, and that's a good thing. Climatic. What this means is that our climate can actually cause recovery. Now, it can also cause depression. You think about seasonal affective disorder. Some people think it's bunk, and it is accepted as a condition in the medical literature. So we know that being in dark, cold places can cause you to be more depressed. So what do? Well, a stay in the mountains is fantastic. You're getting the UV rays and the altitude stimulation. The altitude changes the UV rays. They aren't processed in the same way. They haven't traveled down as far. So you're going to get that, and we're going to get some negative ionization from that. And then the altitude, well, it's going to stimulate other hormonal responses. Trips to the beach. Of course, you see everybody suntanning. There's UV rays. There's the negatively charged ions from the ocean, the salt water as it heats up, it's going to release negatively charged ions. And that's something else that can help with recovery. With either one of these two, honestly, I would say stay away from alcohol if possible. That's a lot of part of the culture when people go skiing or do things. They up in the mountains or doing snowshoeing and things like that. Drinking tends to be a part of that culture. Well, try and stay away from that if all possible if you're doing it for restoration. Likewise, trips to the beach. I mean, we've all seen the videos and pictures. Anytime that there's a lot of people at the beach, there's usually a drink in hand. And, one or two is okay throughout the course of the day, but try not to get tanked, because then you are actually causing the body to go further and further down the wrong way rather than restoration. Mental conditioning. I use the term mental conditioning because we are conditioning the brain. We're learning some skill sets. So let's look at things like meditation. Meditation is going to strengthen the brain, essentially. It's going to allow things to stop. The way that I talk about meditation is that for those of us who are a little bit older, we remember all the computers and having to run something called a defrag that took all of the different files and placed them back how they were supposed to be. That's essentially what meditation does for the brain. Now, in addition to this, there's something called mindfulness-based stress reduction, which means that instead of flying off the handle, you pay attention to where you're at, what you're doing, and what's actually going on, rather than having a emotional response. So with this mindfulness-based stress reduction, it is a way to reframe and reprocess those sorts of things, those different stressors. And whenever you add that on with meditation and possibly even thought stoppage and positive self-talk, these are all ways to really help your brain deal with the stressors that come at you. The meditation will help improve your heart rate variability, lower your risk of popping off, and the mindfulness-based stress reduction brings you back into the present moment of where you're at and what you can do. Now, there's an important point. The body adapts to training, and you continually have to change the training stimulus to further the adaptations. So we're going to need to change recovery modalities and methodologies too. In fact, the Soviets recommended that you do not do the same recovery protocol more than one time per week. Anything more than that, it appeared that the person just adapted to that. So then that training, that recovery stimulus wouldn't be recovery at all. That would just take you back to being normal. But by changing it up frequently, you're more likely to be able to continue to use that for recovery.